The beggar who changed a dentist's life. If you've made it this far, please like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Your participation makes all the difference so we can continue telling stories that transform lives. The clock on the wall of the small office read 6:47 p.m. when Marcos Ribeiro, just 24 years old, sighed deeply as he organized his few dental instruments. The day had been devastating, only 2 patients and a pile of bills that seemed to grow by the hour. The dental chair rent was 3 months overdue, basic supplies were running low, and the monthly tuition for his implantology specialization was draining the last of his savings. Marcos looked into the foggy mirror in his office and saw the reflection of a young man, but already marked by the weight of responsibilities. Having graduated only 8 months earlier from a public university, he had invested all his savings and taken out loans that now seemed unpayable to set up that small 20-square-meter office on the outskirts of São Paulo. His dream of becoming a dentist was turning into a nightmare. His mother, Dona Conceição, worked as a cleaner in 3 different homes to help cover the family's expenses. His father had died when Marcos was just 15, the victim of a massive heart attack, leaving the family in an even more precarious financial situation. It was the modest but sufficient life insurance that allowed Marcos to continue studying and even attend university. "Dr. Marcos, may I come in?" The hoarse, hesitant voice came from the half-open door. Marcos looked up and smelled it before he even saw the figure. A strong odor of sweat, urine, and something indefinable that only those who live on the streets carry with them. At the entrance to the office stood a man of approximately 32 years old, with disheveled hair, a beard that had been unshaven for weeks, and torn and dirty clothes, but with surprisingly bright and intelligent eyes. "Sure, you can come in, sir." "Josias, my name is Josias." The man entered slowly, as if testing whether he was truly welcome. "Sorry about the smell, doctor. I know I don't look presentable, but I really need an appointment." Marcos felt a tightness in his chest. How many times had he seen homeless people rejected by establishments, professionals, and society in general? He himself had grown up in poverty and knew what it was like to be judged by appearance. "Sit down, Josiah. Let's talk about what you need." Josias carefully sat in the patient's chair, as if it were a precious relic. When he opened his mouth, Marcos had to control himself from showing his shock. The teeth were in a deplorable state, some completely destroyed by decay, others with obvious fractures, inflamed and bleeding gums. It was a case that would require a lot of work and, consequently, a lot of money. "Doctor, I'm going to be straight with you. I need to know 2 prices. The cheapest quote you can give me and the full quote, without any savings, to make my teeth perfect." Marcos was intrigued by the question. It was unusual for someone living on the streets to ask about 2 such different budgets, especially the most expensive one. After careful consideration, he did the math. "Look, Josias, being completely honest with you, for a basic emergency solution, just to relieve the pain and do the basics, it would be around 2,800 reals. But for a complete treatment with implants, prosthetics, periodontics, whitening, in short, to make your teeth really healthy and beautiful, we're talking about approximately 45,000 reals." Josias nodded slowly, as if processing complex information. Then, to Marcos's complete surprise, he asked an unexpected question. "Doctor, can I use your phone?" Marcos hesitated for a moment, but then handed over his cell phone. "Sure, feel free." Josias dialed a number from memory, with the precision of someone who'd known those digits for a long time. He waited a few rings until a voice on the other end answered. "Hello, Mr. Otavio? This is Josias ... Yes, sir, I'm fine. No, I don't need any money for myself, but I need a favor ... Quotes. Marcos watched, increasingly confused. Who was this Otavio? How could a beggar have someone's phone number memorized and speak with such familiarity? "Mr. Otavio, I'm at the office of a very good dentist here in Vila Madalena, Dr. Marcos. Yes, I need to have my teeth treated. The total estimate was $45,000. "What do you mean you want to speak to the doctor?" Josias handed the phone to Marcos, who took it with slightly shaking hands. "Hello, Dr. Marcos? This is Otavio Mendonça from Mendonça Incorporadora. Is Josias there with you?" Marcos almost dropped the phone. Mendonça Incorporadora was one of the largest construction companies in the country, with projects spread throughout Brazil. Otavio Mendonça was one of São Paulo's wealthiest businessmen. Constantly appearing in the media and on Forbes Brazil's billionaires list? Yes, Mr. Mendonca, he's here. Doctor, I would like to arrange payment for Josias's full treatment. Do you accept bank transfers? I can make the deposit today. Marcos looked at Josias, who was smiling discreetly, and then at the phone, thinking he was dreaming. Mr. Mendonca, are you sure? It's $45,000. Doctor, if it were $450,000, I would pay it without hesitation. This man saved my son's life. He is worth much more than any money. Can you give me your bank details? Still stunned, Marcos relayed the information. 10 minutes later, his phone pinged with a notification from the bank. Transfer received, $45,000. Otavio Mendonca da Silva. After Otavio hung up, Marcos was silent for a few minutes, looking alternately at the phone and at Josias. Josiah ... who are you really? The man sighed, and for the first time, Marcos saw tears in his eyes. Doctor, I have a long story to tell. If you have time and patience, I'll explain everything. Marcos canceled his few evening commitments and sat down to listen. My full name is Josias Andre da Silva. 10 years ago, I was a pastor of an evangelical church in Osasco. I had a house, a car, a stable life, but I always felt that God was calling me to something greater, something more radical. In 2018, I made a decision that completely changed my life. I took a vow of extreme poverty. Marcos listened attentively, still processing everything that was happening. I gave away everything I had, literally everything. My house, car, furniture, expensive clothes, bank account, everything. And I ended up living on the streets, not out of necessity, but by choice. My mission is to rescue people who have lost hope, who are at rock bottom. Addicts, beggars, prostitutes, people in situations of extreme vulnerability. But how do you know Otavio Mendonca? Oh, doctor, this is a story that moves me to this day. It was 2 years ago. I was in a crack den downtown trying to talk to some young people when I saw a boy of about 17 completely drugged, almost unconscious. He was being beaten by drug dealers because he owed money and had no way to pay. I intervened, got beaten up too, but managed to get the boy out of there. Josiah paused, wiping away his tears. I took him to a rehabilitation center I know. He was admitted for 4 months. During that time, we discovered that he was the son of a wealthy family, had run away from home due to family problems, and ended up getting involved with drugs. His name is Rafael Mendonca. Otavio's son? Exactly. When Rafael recovered and returned home, he told his father the whole story. Otavio came looking for me, offering me money, a house, a job, everything I could want. But I refused everything. He said my mission was to live on the streets and help people. He didn't understand at first, but over time he began to respect my choice. Marcos was fascinated by the story. Since then, whenever I need something to help other people, I call him. Never for myself, always for others. He knows this and never says no to a request. And why did you decide to get your teeth treated now? Josiah smiled, but it was a sad smile. Doctor, there's a group of 47 people I've rescued from the streets over the past 2 years. They're recovering in various centers, I know. Some have already found jobs, others are taking vocational courses, but they all have one problem in common. Their teeth are destroyed. Marcos began to understand where the conversation was going. Low self-esteem due to their appearance is hindering their reintegration into society. Many lose job opportunities because of their ruined smiles. Others can't even smile properly. I thought about bringing them all here, if you'd be willing. Otavio would pay for the treatments. Marcus's heart raced. 47 patients with complex treatments? That would mean revenue of over 2 million reais. Josiah, are you serious? Completely serious, doctor. But only if you guarantee that you will treat everyone with the same care and respect you treated me today. These people have already suffered a lot of prejudice in their lives. Marcos stood up and extended his hand to Josias. We have a deal. In the following days, Marcus's life was turned upside down. Otavio not only confirmed payment for the treatments, but also advanced a sum so Marcos could better organize himself. With the money, he paid off all his debts, purchased new equipment, renovated his office, and even hired an assistant. But the challenges were just beginning. Josias's first group of patients arrived on a Monday morning. They were 5 people, 3 men and 2 women, all with devastating stories of life on the streets. Marcos felt the emotional impact of listening to each story, but he also saw the hope in each of their eyes as he explained how the treatments would work. However, not everything went as planned. In the second week, Marcos received an unexpected visitor, Dr. Ricardo Almera, president of the Regional Dental Council. Dr. Marcos, we have received some complaints about your professional practice. Complaints? What kind of complaints? Apparently, some colleagues are questioning the origin of your patients and your sudden financial prosperity. There are suspicions that you may be involved in some irregular scheme. Marcos felt his blood run cold. Some dentists in the area, disturbed by the sudden improvement in his practice's structure and the increased flow of patients, had filed anonymous complaints suggesting illicit activities. Dr. Ricardo, I can explain the whole situation. There's nothing wrong here. Marcos told the whole story. Josias, Otavio, the social work, the recovering patients. Dr. Ricardo listened attentively, but maintained a skeptical expression. Dr. Marcos, I understand your version, but you understand that I need to investigate. I will need all financial documentation, transfer receipts, patient contracts, ... Double quotes, the next 2 months were the most difficult of Marcos's professional life. While the CRO investigation unfolded, he continued to see Josias's patients, but always with the shadow of suspicion hanging over him. Some suppliers began demanding payment in cash, fearing they were involved in something illegal. The assistant he had hired resigned, fearing the implications. Josias noticed Marcos suffering and felt guilty. Doctor, I can ask Mr. Otavio to speak directly to the council, explain everything ... Double quote, no, Josiah. If I'm going to prove my suitability, I have to do it myself. With the truth, the situation became even more complicated when the Federal Revenue Service also opened an investigation into Marcos's financial transactions. The young dentist was forced to hire a lawyer, spending a good portion of the money he had earned. During this turbulent period, something unexpected happened. Josias's first patients who had completed their treatments began returning to the office, not for more appointments, but to bring friends and family. The quality of Marcos's work, and especially the respectful way he treated people in vulnerable situations, began to generate a positive reputation in the community. Maria Aparecida, one of the first patients, had gotten a job at a bakery after having her teeth restored. She returned to the office accompanied by her 3 daughters, all of whom needed dental treatment. Dr. Marcos, she said, tears in her eyes, you have changed my life. Now I can smile again, I can work and look people in the eye. I want my daughters to be treated by you too. These stories of transformation began to spread. Within 3 months, Marcos had a waiting list of over 200 patients, most of them referrals from Josias's patients. But the investigation continued. Dr. Ricardo returned to the office several times, reviewing medical records, checking procedures, and talking to patients. Marcos cooperated with everything, maintaining absolute transparency. The turning point came when Dr. Ricardo decided to speak personally with Otavio Mendonca. The businessman not only confirmed the entire story but also invited the FRO president to visit the rehabilitation centers where the formerly homeless people Josias had rescued were being housed. Dr. Ricardo, Otavio said during the meeting, if there were more professionals like Dr. Marcos, our society would be a much better place. He's not just treating teeth, he's restoring human dignity. The investigation was closed and Dr. Ricardo made a point of personally going to Marcos' office to apologize. Dr. Marcos, I sincerely apologize for any inconvenience. In fact, the council would like to nominate your work for a social responsibility award that we present annually. With the investigation concluded, Marcos could finally focus fully on his work. He expanded his practice, hired 2 more dentists to assist him, and a full team of assistants and receptionists. The practice became a benchmark not only for dental treatments but also for the humanization of care. Josias continued to lead groups of people rescued from the streets. Each story was unique, each transformation moving. There was Claudia, who was addicted to crack and had lost all her front teeth. After treatment, she was able to reintegrate into society and now works as a caregiver for the elderly. There was Joe, a former homeless man who, after having his smile restored, discovered a talent for sales and now manages a clothing store. But the most impactful story was that of Rafael, Octavio's own son. Rafael had stayed clean since Josiah saved him, but he carried deep trauma from his time on the streets. His relationship with his father was strained, marked by resentment and mutual distrust. When Rafael turned 19, he asked Marcos for dental treatment. Dr. Marcos, Raphael said during the consultation, when I was on drugs, I fought a lot with my father and did terrible things to my teeth. I pulled out 2 of my front teeth during withdrawal. I've never been able to forgive myself for that. Raphael's treatment was one of the most complex Marcos had ever performed. Implants and bone grafts were required, and months of work were involved, but the results were extraordinary. The day Raphael removed his temporary braces and saw his smile restored, he cried for hours. Otavio was present at the appointment and also couldn't contain his emotion. "Father," said Raphael, "I can smile again. I can look at myself in the mirror without feeling ashamed." Father and son embraced right there in the office in front of Marcos and Josias. It was a moment of complete reconciliation. Otavio, deeply moved, made a decision that would change everything once again. "Doctor Marcos, Josias, you two have changed my family's life in a way I can never repay. I'd like to make you a proposal." The two listened attentively. "I want to fund the creation of a dental clinic specializing in social services. A large, modern facility with multiple offices so you can expand this work. I want it to be a national reference in dental treatment for people in vulnerable situations." Marcos was speechless. Josias smiled, but made a consideration. "Mr. Otavio, it's a wonderful idea, but as long as Dr. Marcos remains the technical manager, this work only works because he treats everyone with genuine love." The new clinic took 8 months to build. Otavio spared no expense: 15 fully equipped consulting rooms, an in-house prosthetics lab, a surgical center for implants, a digital X-ray room, and a spacious and welcoming reception area. The total investment was 4.2 million reals. Instituto Odontologico Esperanza was the chosen name. Marcos was appointed technical director, earning a monthly salary of 35,000 reals, plus a share of the profits. The clinic would operate under a mixed model. 70% of the services would be free for those in need, and 30% would be paid to financially support the project. The inauguration was a life-changing event. Josias's first 47 patients were present, all with radiant smiles along with health officials, press representatives, and dozens of people from the community. Dr. Ricardo from the CRO made a point of being present and giving a speech. The Esperanza Dental Institute represents all that is most noble in our profession. Dr. Marcos and Josias teach us that dentistry goes far beyond treating teeth. It can transform lives, restore dignity, and restore hope. In its first 6 months of operation, the institute treated more than 2,000 patients. Demand was so high that a waiting list had to be created, organized by case urgency. Marcos hired 8 more dentists, all selected not only for their technical expertise but also for their social sensitivity. Josias's work also expanded. He created a support network with other urban missionaries, increasing the number of rescues for homeless people. Otavio financed the creation of 3 rehabilitation centers, where those rescued received not only addiction treatment but also professional training, psychological support, and of course comprehensive dental care at the Institute. The transformation in Marcos's life was complete. From a young, debt-ridden, and hopeless dentist, he became a nationally respected social entrepreneur. His monthly income exceeded 80,000 reals, zero, including salary, profit sharing, and the private consultations he still maintained. He bought a comfortable home for his mother, Donna Conseacu, who was finally able to stop working as a cleaning lady. He paid off all his student loans, bought a new car, and even managed to invest in a savings account that grew month by month. But the money, Marcos discovered, wasn't the greatest reward. It was seeing the sparkle in each patient's eyes when they smiled for the first time in years. It was receiving calls from people who had found jobs after their treatments. It was knowing he was making a real difference in the lives of hundreds of people. The media began to take interest in the story. First, there were reports in local newspapers, then regional TV programs, and finally, the story reached major national outlets. Marcos was featured on the cover of Exame magazine in a story about social entrepreneurship. Josias was interviewed on Fantastico, moving all of Brazil with his dedication to those most in need. With media exposure, even greater opportunities arose. Marcos was invited to lecture at universities, dental conferences, and corporate events. He created a humanized care methodology that began to be studied at dental schools across the country. The Instituto Odontologico Esperanza became a model for similar projects in other cities. Municipal governments sought Marcos' advice on creating public oral health programs for vulnerable populations. 3 years after Josias's first appointment, Marcos was invited to be a keynote speaker at Latin America's largest dental conference. In front of 3,000 dentists, he shared his story. "Colleagues, I was a broke recent graduate, thinking about giving up the profession when a smelly homeless man walked into my office. Today, thanks to that visit, our institute has transformed more than 8,000 smiles. I learned that true wealth is not in the money we earn, but in the lives we touch." The audience rose to their feet in a 5-minute standing ovation. Otavio, at 70, decided to retire from business and dedicate himself fully to philanthropy. He created the Projeto Sorriso Brasil, a national network of social dental clinics, modeled after the Instituto Odontológico Esperança. The initial investment was 50 million reals, with the goal of establishing 20 clinics within 5 years. "Dr. Marcos," said Otavio during the project launch, "when Josias saved my son, I thought the debt of gratitude was only with him. But now I understand that you two saved not only Rafael, but me as well. You showed me that true success in life is being able to help others." Rafael, in turn, decided to study dentistry, inspired by Marcos's work. "I want to follow in your footsteps, doctor. I want to be able to transform lives the way you transformed mine," said the young man, who became one of the Institute's most active volunteers. Josias continued to live on the streets by choice, but now he had institutional support for his work. The Institute created a specific department to support urban missionaries, providing resources, training, and support for those working with vulnerable populations. "Dr. Marcos," Josias said one afternoon, "sometimes I wonder if God didn't plan all this from the beginning. My life on the streets, my encounter with Rafael, my arrival in your office, maybe it was all part of a bigger plan." Marcos reflected on this observation. It truly seemed as if every piece of the puzzle had fallen into place perfectly. His training in dentistry, his difficult financial situation that made him more empathetic to those in need, his encounter with Josias, his connection with Otavio, it all seemed part of a larger symphony. The Institute's 5th anniversary was celebrated with a grand party. Over 500 people attended, former patients, employees, partners, officials, and volunteers. The event was broadcast live on social media and received over 100,000 views. During the event, it was announced that the Institute had reached the milestone of 15,000 free consultations. Marcos, in his speech, moved everyone. "5 years ago, I was a hopeless young dentist, afraid I wouldn't be able to pay my bills. Today, our network of social clinics employs more than 200 people and has transformed thousands of lives. This was only possible because one day a man named Josias had the courage to come into my office, despite the prejudice he knew he would face." Josias, who rarely spoke in public, asked to go on stage. "Friends, I took a vow of material poverty, but I discovered that I am the richest man in the world, rich in friends, in purpose, in joy. And it all started when I met a young dentist who treated me with dignity when I needed it most." The audience stood and applauded for long minutes. That night, after the event, Marcos took stock of his life. At 29, he had a net worth of over 3 million reals. He was the managing partner of a chain of clinics with annual revenues of 15 million reals. He was nationally recognized as a social entrepreneur. His lectures were sought after by universities and companies across the country. But most important of all, he woke up every day with purpose. He knew his work had meaning, that each day he could transform at least one life. His mother, Donna Conce Ecu, now 58 and finally retired, lived in a comfortable house that Marcos had bought for her. "Son," she once said, "your father would be very proud. You not only realized your dream of being a dentist, you became an instrument of God to help those in need." The Institute's success attracted international attention. Marcos was invited to speak at Harvard on entrepreneurship with social impact. It was his first time traveling outside Brazil. "Ladies and gentlemen, this inglês que havia aprendido especificamente para a ocasião. 5 years ago, I was a broke young dentist. Today, I run a network of social dental clinics that has transformed thousands of lives." The lesson I want to share with you is simple. Sometimes our greatest opportunities come disguised as our biggest challenges. The lecture was a resounding success. Marcos received proposals to expand the Institute's model to other Latin American countries. An American foundation offered $2 million to support the project's international expansion. Back in Brazil, Marcos gathered his team to discuss the next steps. The institute already had units in 5 Brazilian states, served more than 500 people daily, and had become a global reference in social dentistry. "Everyone," Marcos said during the meeting, "we have the opportunity to take our model to other countries. But I want everyone to know we will not lose our essence. Our commitment remains to the people most in need." Josias, who participated in the Institute's strategic meetings as a social inclusion consultant, raised an important question. "Dr. Marcos, with all this growth, how can we ensure that we don't lose the human touch that has always set us apart?" It was a legitimate concern. Success can often lead to the mechanization of processes, to the loss of the sensitivity that was at the root of it all. Marcos made a decision. He created the Josias program, a mandatory training program for all professionals in the network, where they spent a whole day living with homeless people to understand and practice the difficulties faced by the patients served by the Institute. "I don't want any of our professionals to forget where we came from and why we do what we do," Marcos explained to the newly hired dentists. The program was a success. Dentists who previously saw only clinical cases began to see people with specific stories, dreams, and needs. The quality of personalized care remained high, even with the expansion. The first international unit was opened in Bogotá, Colombia, 6 years after Josias's first consultation. The event was attended by the Colombian Minister of Health and featured in the country's major newspapers. Marcos and Josias traveled to the inauguration, accompanied by Otavio, who made a point of being present at all the project's important milestones. "Gentlemen," Marcos said in Spanish during the ceremony, "this institute represents proof that when we combine technical competence with love for our neighbor, we can change the world, one smile at a time." The impact was even greater when one of the first patients treated in Bogotá got a job as a receptionist at a 5-star hotel. Maria Elena had lost all her front teeth in a traffic accident and, unable to afford treatment, had been unemployed for 3 years. "Dr. Marcos," he said through a video sent to the Institute's social networks, "you not only gave me back my teeth, you gave me back my life, my dignity, my future. Now I can smile without shame." The video went viral, being shared over 2 million times, and sparked a wave of spontaneous donations to the Institute. Ordinary people, business people, and even celebrities began contributing financially to the project. Marcos realized a unique opportunity, creating a crowdfunding platform specifically for social dental treatment. The Solidarity Smile platform was launched 2 months later, allowing anyone to sponsor the full treatment of a needy patient for $2,500.00. The idea is to democratize philanthropy. Marcos explained in an interview with Jornal Nacional, "You don't have to be a millionaire to transform a life. With 2,500 reals, anyone can sponsor a complete smile." The platform was an immediate success. Within 3 months, more than 10,000 people had signed up as Smile sponsors. Each sponsor received photographic reports on their sponsored child's treatment progress, creating a unique emotional connection. One of the most touching stories was that of Antonio Carlos, a Snow Paulo executive who decided to sponsor the treatment of Jose, a 45-year-old garbage collector. Antonio followed the entire process, from the first consultation to the fitting of the final prosthetics. On the day the work was delivered, he insisted on being present. "Jose," Antonio said, his eyes welling up, "seeing your transformation has changed my perspective on what truly matters in life. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of your story." Jose, who couldn't stop smiling when looking at himself in the mirror, hugged Antonio. "Dr. Antonio, you gave me much more than new teeth. You gave me hope that there are still good people in this world." The connection between sponsors and sponsees has become one of the platform's most striking features. Many sponsors have continued to follow their sponsees' lives even after treatment ends, creating lasting bonds of friendship and mutual support. The platform's success has caught the attention of major social investors. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has expressed interest in supporting the expansion of the model to African countries. A meeting has been scheduled for Seattle. "Marcos," Bill Gates said during the initial video conference, "you have created a scalable social impact model that can revolutionize access to oral health in developing countries. We are interested in investing $10 million to bring this model to Africa. It was an extraordinary opportunity, but Marcos knew he needed to keep his feet on the ground. He called a meeting with the entire Institute board to discuss the proposal. "Guys," he said, "this is an incredible opportunity, but we need to make sure we can maintain our quality and our values even with such a large expansion." Josias, now 38 and internationally recognized as an expert in social inclusion, made an important observation. "Dr. Marcos, I support expansion, but I suggest we do a pilot project first. Let's choose an African country, implement the model there, learn from the region's specific challenges, and then consider further expansion." The suggestion was unanimously accepted. Ghana was chosen as the pilot country due to its political stability and relatively well-organized health system. Preparations for the African expansion took 8 months. Marcos traveled to Ghana 3 times, studying local needs, and meeting with health authorities, universities, and partner NGOs. The inauguration of the first Hope Dental Institute in Accra took place in grand style, attended by Ghana's Minister of Health and representatives of the World Health Organization. "Today," dis Marcos durante a cerimônia, "we are not just opening a dental clinic. We are planting a seed of hope that will grow into a forest of transformed lives." The challenge in Ghana was greater than imagined. Cultural, linguistic, and socioeconomic differences required constant adaptations to the Brazilian model. Marcos decided to spend 3 months living in Accra to closely monitor the implementation. It was during this stay that he met Akasua, a 28-year-old local dentist who had volunteered at the institute. Akasua had studied abroad and returned to Ghana with the dream of improving access to oral health care in her country. "Dr. Marcos," she said during one of the first meetings, "your model is brilliant, but we need to adapt it to our reality. Here, many people have never seen a dentist in their lives. We need much more education and awareness-raising work." Akasua was right. The Institute implemented an oral health education program that reached schools, rural communities, and local markets. More than 200 community health workers were trained to do the groundwork. The professional relationship between Marcos and Akasua gradually evolved into something more personal. They shared a passion for social dentistry and spent hours discussing strategies to improve care. "Akasua," Marcos said one night after a particularly challenging day, "you remind me why I fell in love with this profession. Your dedication is inspiring," she smiled. "Marcos, you brought hope to my country. How could I not fall in love with someone who dedicates their life to transforming smiles?" The romance between them developed naturally, but Marcos was torn between his feelings and his responsibilities in Brazil. After 5 months in Ghana, he had to return to take care of business in Brazil, leaving Akasua in charge of the local operations. "I'll be back," he promised at the airport. "Somehow we'll make this work." Back in Brazil, Marcos found the institute booming. There were already 15 operating units, over 400 employees, and a waiting list of 50,000 people. Annual revenue had exceeded 35 million reals, and the profit margin allowed for constant reinvestment in new units and equipment. But professional success didn't fill the personal void Marcos felt. Daily video conferences with Akasua eased his homesickness somewhat, but he knew he had to make a decision: either expand fully into Africa or bring Akasua to Brazil. The solution came from an unexpected source. Rafael Mendonça, now a 24-year-old dentist, approached Marcos with a proposal. "Dr. Marcos," said Rafael, "I would like to take over coordinating operations in Brazil for a while. You could spend a few months a year in Ghana implementing the African expansion, and a few months here overseeing the Brazilian work." It was the perfect solution. Rafael had graduated with honors, completed his residency in oral surgery and implantology, and was deeply familiar with the Institute's philosophy. Furthermore, he was Otavio's son, which guaranteed continued financial support. "Rafael," Marcos said emotionally, "are you sure? It's a huge responsibility. Doctor, everything I am today I owe to you and Josias. This is my way of giving back. Besides, I learned from my father that the best businesses are those that do good for people." The transition of responsibilities took place gradually over 6 months. Rafael demonstrated administrative competence and natural leadership. Under his leadership, the Brazilian Institute not only maintained its quality standards, but also implemented important innovations, such as telemedicine for follow-up appointments and an app for online scheduling. Marcos was then able to divide his time between Brazil and Ghana. He spent 4 months a year in Africa, 2 months traveling to other countries for lectures and consulting, and 6 months in Brazil overseeing national operations. The relationship with Akasua blossomed. They worked together during the day and explored Ghanaian culture during the evenings and weekends. Marcos learned to speak basic Twi and Akasua perfected her Portuguese. "Marcos," Akasua said during a romantic dinner on a Cape Coast beach, "you have completely changed my life. Not just professionally, but as a person. Akasua, you showed me that love has no geographical or cultural boundaries. I'm seriously considering moving here permanently." She was silent for a few seconds, then replied, "Actually, I was thinking the opposite. I'd like to visit Brazil, work there for a while. What do you think?" It was a new possibility that Marcos hadn't considered. Akasua was in Brazil, working at the Institute, learning the original model, and then returning to Ghana as regional director for Africa. 6 months later, Akasua arrived at Guarulhos Airport for a year-long stay in Brazil. Marcos, Josias, and Rafael were there to greet her. It was a touching encounter, especially since Josias and Akasua immediately bonded over their shared passion for helping those in need. "Josias," Akasua said in Portuguese, which he had practiced extensively, "Marcos told me your story. You are a hero to me." "Akasua," Josiah replied with his characteristic smile, "heroes are people like you, who leave their countries to learn and then return to help their people. Welcome to our family." Akasua's integration into the Brazilian Institute was seamless. She brought a valuable international perspective and implemented some practices she had developed in Ghana. Her experience with community health education was especially useful in expanding the Institute's preventive work. During her time in Brazil, Akasua gained a deep understanding of Brazilian culture, learned samba, tried all the regional foods, and fell in love with the warm hospitality of the Brazilian people. But what impressed her most was the scale of the Institute's social work. "Marcos," she said after visiting the Institute's 10th unit, "you have created something extraordinary here. In Ghana, we are still in our infancy, but you have already turned this into a national movement." Their personal relationship also deepened. After 8 months of long-distance dating and 4 months of daily life in Brazil, Marcos summoned the courage to take the big step. During a romantic dinner at the restaurant of the Copacabana Palace Hotel in Rio de Janeiro, where they had gone for a dentistry conference, Marcos got down on one knee and asked Akasua to marry him. "Akasua, you've brought an international dimension to my life and work. Will you build this dream with me as my wife and life partner?" She said yes, through tears of joy. The engagement ring was simple, but it had special meaning. It was made with gold mined in Ghana, symbolizing the union of their two cultures. The wedding was scheduled to take place simultaneously in Brazil and Ghana via video conference so that families and friends from both countries could participate. The Brazilian ceremony took place in the event hall of the Instituto Odontológico Esperança, decorated with flowers from Brazil and Ghana. Otávio was Marcos' godfather, and Josias gave a moving speech during the ceremony. "Marcos and Akasua, you represent the most beautiful thing about being human, the ability to love without borders and to work together for a better world." Their honeymoon was a disguised work trip. They visited social projects in 5 African countries, studying public health models to incorporate into the Institute. It was a unique experience that combined romance, adventure, and professional learning. Back in Brazil, Akasua took over as the Institute's international director, responsible for coordinating all operations outside the country. Under his leadership, the model was implemented in 4 additional African countries: Senegal, Kenya, Uganda, and South Africa. Each new unit brought unique challenges, but also learning opportunities. In Senegal, they discovered the importance of adapting opening hours to Ramadan. In Kenya, they learned to work with tribes with ancient dental traditions. In South Africa, they faced the challenge of the aftermath of apartheid in the healthcare system. "Every country teaches us something new," Akasua said during planning meetings. "Our strength lies not in imposing a rigid model, but in adapting our philosophy to local realities." The Institute's 10th anniversary was celebrated with a major international conference in São Paulo. Participating were representatives from 15 countries, 200 dentists, 50 non-governmental organizations, and health authorities from various governments. The conference's theme was Social Dentistry, a Decade of Transformation. During the event, impressive numbers were presented. 100,000 patients treated free of charge, 45 units operating in 12 countries, 800 direct employees, 50 million reais in annual revenue and 30 million reais reinvested in expansion and improvements. But beyond the numbers, what moved those present most were the testimonials. Hundreds of former patients sent videos describing how the Institute had transformed their lives. There were stories of people getting better jobs, getting married, and going back to school, all because they had regained confidence in their smiles. 10 years ago, Marcos said during his closing speech, I was a broke young dentist who almost gave up on the profession. Today, we have an international network that transforms thousands of lives each year. This was only possible because one day a man named Josias had the courage to ask for help, and a businessman named Otavio had the generosity to help. From then on, each person who joined our project contributed a little piece of that transformation. Josias, now 42 and recognized as one of the world's leading experts on urban social inclusion, sat in the front row, beaming with pride. At 77, Otavio remained active and present in all the Institute's important decisions. My dears, Otavio said into the microphone, when Josias saved my son 12 years ago, I never imagined that moment would generate all this. Today I can say that this institute is my greatest business pride, not for the profits it generates, but for the lives it transforms. The conference concluded with the launch of the 1 Million Smiles campaign, an ambitious goal of serving 1 million patients free of charge over the next 10 years. This would require expanding to 100 locations in 30 countries. It's an audacious goal, Marcos admitted during a press conference, but we believe it's possible. We have the experience, we have the right partners, and most importantly, we have the necessary motivation. In the months following the event, the Institute received partnership proposals from several countries. The Indian government expressed interest in implementing the model in 5 major cities. The European Union offered funding to bring the project to Syrian refugees. The World Bank proposed including the Institute in a global public health program. These were extraordinary opportunities, but Marcos and his team knew they needed to grow sustainably, always maintaining quality and founding values. The decision was to create a training institute in social dentistry, responsible for training professionals worldwide in the methodology developed by the Institute. This would allow the model to be expanded without losing control over quality. The Training Institute opened 2 years later, occupying a 5-story building in the heart of São Paulo. It offered specialization courses, professional master's degrees, and international exchange programs. In its first year, it trained 300 professionals from 25 different countries. Our goal, explained Akasua, who took over as director of the Training Institute, is to create a worldwide network of dentists specializing in humane care for vulnerable populations. The Institute's graduates have spread across the world, taking the methodology to places they never imagined it would reach. Alumni have worked with refugees in Lebanon, indigenous communities in Canada, and orphan children in Thailand. One of the most memorable stories was that of Dr. Ahmed, a Syrian dentist who had lost everything in the war and taken refuge in Germany. After completing his training in Brazil, he created a mobile clinic to serve Arab refugees in Europe. Dr. Marcos, Ahmed wrote in a letter, you have given me back not only my profession, but my hope. Today I see 50 patients a week who, like me, have lost everything but still believe they can rebuild their lives. The Training Institute's success attracted international academic attention. Harvard, MIT, and Oxford invited Marcos to be a visiting professor, teaching classes on social entrepreneurship and innovation in public health. By the age of 35, Marcos had become a global leader in social dentistry. His personal wealth exceeded 15 million reals, yet he continued to live in the same middle-class neighborhood in São Paulo, driving a simple car and maintaining modest personal habits. Money is just a tool, he often said in his lectures. True wealth lies in the positive impact we can make on other people's lives. Akasua became pregnant in her 12th year at the Institute. The news was greeted with celebration by the entire staff, especially Josias, who would be the child's godfather. This baby will be born into a family that dedicates its life to caring for others, Josias said emotionally. What a privilege for a child. Marcos Gabriel was born on a sunny September morning, healthy, and with a smile that already charmed everyone. His name honored both his father and the Archangel of the Annunciation, symbolizing the arrival of good news. "Look at that smile," said Ottavio, holding his grandson in his arms. He was born knowing the importance of a beautiful smile. The arrival of his son brought a new perspective to Marcos. He began to think not only about the Institute's gift, but also about the legacy he would leave for future generations. "I want my son to grow up in a world where no one has to be ashamed to smile because they don't have access to dental care," Marcos said during an interview with a parenting magazine. To this end, he decided to create a perpetual endowment for the Institute, ensuring its indefinite financial sustainability. The initial fund was capitalized with 50 million reals, coming from donations from Ottavio, profits reinvested by the Institute itself, and contributions from other entrepreneurs inspired by the story. This fund ensures that the Institute will continue to exist even when we are all no longer here, explained Marcos during the launch of the initiative. Josias, at 44, continued to live on the streets by choice, but now had full institutional support for his work. The Institute created the Josias program in his honor, funding urban missionaries in 20 Brazilian cities. "Dr. Marcos," Josias said during a conversation, "sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't had the courage to walk into your office that day. Josiah, I'm sure God would have found another way to put us on the right path, but I thank you every day for having that courage." The Institute's 15th anniversary was celebrated with a special ceremony at the Planalto Palace in Brasilia. The President of the Republic awarded Marcos, Josias, and Ottavio the Order of Medical Merit, Brazil's highest honor for healthcare professionals. "You three have proven that it is possible to do profitable business and, at the same time, transform society," the President said during the ceremony. The Esperança Dental Institute is now a national treasure and an example to the world. At that moment, with his son in his arms, his wife by his side, his friends being honored, and hundreds of people applauding, Marcos had an epiphany. It had all begun with a simple act of humanity. Treating a homeless person with dignity had transformed into the largest social dentistry network in the world. The story of the poor boy who became a dentist, the beggar missionary who saved lives on the streets, and the businessman who learned the value of generosity had magically intertwined, creating something far greater than any of them could have imagined individually. Today, at 40, Marcos wakes up every day knowing his life has purpose. The Instituto Odontológico Esperança serves more than 200,000 patients annually in 35 countries. More than 500,000 smiles have been transformed over its 15 years of existence. But for him, the most important number isn't in the statistics. It's the sparkle in the eyes of each person who smiles again without shame after years of hiding their teeth. And it all started that Tuesday afternoon when a broke young dentist decided to treat a smelly beggar with the same dignity he would treat a millionaire. But the story doesn't end there. Fate has more surprises in store for our protagonists. In the Institute's 16th year, an unexpected situation would put everything to the test. A global pandemic of unprecedented proportions hit the world, forcing the closure of non-essential businesses, including dental clinics. It was March 2025, and Marcos saw his network of 50 clinics around the world having to suspend services overnight. "Akasua," Marcos said during an emergency video conference with the entire board. "We have 1,200 employees to pay, rent, equipment financing... How are we going to survive this?" The situation was desperate. Within weeks, the Institute's revenue plummeted to virtually zero, while fixed costs continued to rise. Even with the endowment they had created, the resources would not be enough to keep everything running for long without revenue. It was then that Josias, at 48 years old and now with gray hair, but maintaining the same energy as always, had an idea that would change everything again. "Dr. Marcos," he said during a virtual meeting, "what if we brought the Institute to the people since they can't come to us?" "What do you mean, Josiah?" "Mobile clinics, doctor. Dental units mounted on vans and trucks, which can reach the most needy communities. During the pandemic, these people are even more vulnerable." The idea was brilliant, but it would require investment at a time when money was scarce. Marcos took the proposal to Ottavio, now 83, but still lucid and engaged. "Marcos," said the old businessman, "at 83 years old, I've learned that the greatest opportunities arise in times of greatest crisis. I'm going to personally finance 20 mobile clinics to get us started. Within 3 months, the Institute's first fleet of mobile clinics was traveling through the outskirts of São Paulo. These vans were fully equipped with a fully equipped consulting room, portable X-ray equipment, an autoclave, and everything needed to perform basic and emergency treatments. The impact was immediate. Communities that had never before had access to quality dental care now had the Institute at their doorsteps. Images of lines of people waiting for care at mobile clinics went viral on social media. "Dr. Marcos," said Donna Maria, a 67-year-old woman living in a favela in São Paulo, "I never thought I would see the day when a dentist would come to my street. You are an angel." The response was so positive that city governments in several cities began contracting with the Institute to bring mobile clinics to the most underserved neighborhoods. What had begun as an emergency solution to the pandemic has now become a new line of business. During this difficult period, Marcos also faced personal challenges. His son, Marcos Gabriel, now 3 years old, was diagnosed with a rare neurological condition that required specialized treatment. Sleepless nights in hospitals, combined with the pressure of keeping the Institute running during the crisis, pushed Marcos to his physical and emotional limits. "Akasua," he said one evening after another exhausting day, "sometimes I wonder if it's worth all this sacrifice. Am I neglecting my family because of work?" She hugged him affectionately. "Marcos, our son is surrounded by love and receiving the best possible treatment. And the work we do at the Institute saves families every day." Gabriel will grow up proud of the father he has. Josias, who had practically become an uncle to Marcos Gabriel, also offered his support. "Dr. Marcos, God never gives us burdens greater than we can carry. And look at how many people are here to share this weight with you." The boy's treatment was long and costly, but successful. At age 4, Marcos Gabriel was fully recovered, playing and smiling like any normal child. The experience, however, made Marcos reflect on priorities and work-life balance. "I realized that, no matter how important our work is, family must always come first," Marcos said during a leadership talk a few months later. "A leader who can't take care of his own family will hardly be able to take good care of hundreds of employees." The mobile clinic spread quickly. Within 2 years, there were 80 units operating throughout Brazil and 15 other countries. The innovation attracted international attention, and Marcos was invited to present the model at the UN General Assembly. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said before representatives from 193 countries, "mobile clinics prove that we can bring quality health care to the most remote places on the planet. It is no longer acceptable for anyone to suffer because they lack access to basic dental care." The presentation was a resounding success. Several countries expressed interest in implementing the mobile clinic model. The World Health Organization invited the Institute to be an official partner in a global oral health campaign. "Dr. Marcos," said the WHO Director General during the signing of the agreement, "you are revolutionizing the concept of public health. The mobile clinic model can be adapted to various medical specialties." It was then that Marcos made a bold decision to expand the concept to other areas of healthcare. Thus, the Mobile Health Institute was born, offering not only dentistry but also basic clinical medicine, ophthalmology, gynecology, and pediatrics in mobile units. The new project required even greater investment. Otavio, now 85, made a decision that surprised everyone. He donated 80% of his fortune, approximately 2 billion reals, to create a foundation dedicated exclusively to financing mobile health projects for underserved populations. "Marcos Josias," he said during the founding ceremony of the Otavio Mendonça Foundation, "you taught me that true wealth lies in being able to help others. I can't take this money with me, but I can ensure that it continues to transform lives for generations." The ceremony was broadcast live worldwide. Presidents, prime ministers, and world leaders sent messages congratulating the initiative. Pope Francis sent a special blessing, calling Otavio's gesture an example of how love for one's neighbor can transform the world. With the Foundation's resources, the Mobile Health Institute expanded rapidly. Within 3 years, there were 200 mobile units operating in 40 countries, serving over 500,000 people annually. The initiative created over 5,000 direct jobs and saved countless lives. One of the most remarkable stories was that of Maria dos Santos, an 8-year-old girl living in a remote village in the Amazon. She had a severe tooth infection that had spread and was threatening her life. The mobile clinic arrived in the village just in time to save her. "Doctor," said the girl's father, tears in his eyes, "you are angels sent by God. My daughter would have died if you hadn't arrived." Stories like this arrive daily at the Institute. Each life saved, each smile restored, each family benefited reinforced Marcos's conviction that he had found his true purpose in life. At 42, Marcos had become one of the world's most influential figures in public health. His personal wealth exceeded 50 million reals, but his greatest wealth lay in the 750,000 lives the Institute had transformed over 18 years. "Daddy," Marcos Gabriel asked one night, "why do you work so much?" Marcos knelt down to his son's level. "Because there are many people in the world who need help, my son, and God has given us the opportunity to help them. When I grow up, I also want to help people like you and Uncle Josiah," Marcos smiled, knowing that the legacy was assured for the next generation. The Institute's 20th anniversary was celebrated with a simultaneous mega ceremony in 50 cities around the world. The UN declared it World Smile Day, a day to celebrate the importance of oral health and human dignity. During the main ceremony in São Paulo, Marcos gave a speech that moved millions of people watching on TV and the internet. 20 years ago, I was a broke young dentist who almost gave up on his dreams. Today, our global network serves more than 1 million people a year. This was only possible because 3 lives magically intersected. Mine, that of missionary Josias, and that of businessman Otavio. Together we proved that there are no impossible dreams when we have genuine love for people. Josias, at 52, continued his work on the streets, now supported by a network of 500 urban missionaries spread across the world. Otavio, at 87, remained active and involved, proud to see his legacy continue. "My dears," Otavio said during the ceremony, "when Josiah saved my son 22 years ago, I never imagined that that moment would generate all of this. Today I can say that I have lived a full life, because I helped create something that will continue to transform lives long after I am no longer here." Emotion gripped everyone present. Here were 3 men from different generations, united by the same purpose, to serve others with love and dedication. Dear friends who followed this incredible story to the end, you've just heard one of the most inspiring stories we've ever had the privilege of sharing. Here on the channel lives that touch the 20-year journey of Marcos Josias, and Otavio shows us that small acts of humanity can generate gigantic waves of transformation in the world. Think for a moment, how often do we judge people by their appearance? How many opportunities to do good do we miss because our prejudices prevent us from seeing the potential in every human being? Dr. Marcos's story teaches us that true success isn't measured solely by the money we earn, but by the positive impact we can make on other people's lives. He went from a modest practice with accumulated debt to becoming a global leader in mobile health, all because he had the courage to treat a homeless man with dignity when he needed it most. Josias shows us that there are people willing to give up all material comforts to serve others. His dedication to society's forgotten not only saved hundreds of lives on the streets, but also created a network of transformation that spread throughout the world. And Otavio teaches us that true wealth lies in using our resources to generate value for society. He transformed his personal gratitude into a global movement for inclusion and human dignity, donating almost his entire fortune to perpetuate this legacy. But perhaps the most powerful lesson from this story is about persistence and adaptation. When the pandemic threatened to destroy everything they had built, they didn't give up. They innovated, created mobile clinics, and turned the crisis into an opportunity for even greater impact. History also teaches us about Balancercos learned that no matter how noble our mission, we should never neglect our family. A true leader is one who can balance professional success with personal happiness. And you, who follow us here on the channel, what lessons do you take from this extraordinary journey? You may not have the resources of an Otavio to donate billions, nor the courage of a Josias to live on the streets, nor the technical skills of a Marcos. But each of us can contribute in our own way, treating all people with dignity, regardless of their social status, offering second chances to those who need to start over using our talents, however small, to serve others, being a bridge between those who need help and those who can help. teaching our children the value of generosity and service, not giving up on our dreams when difficulties appear, turning our crises into opportunities for growth. Remember, every great social transformation began with an ordinary person who decided to do something extraordinary. What strikes me most about this story is how it shows us that true success is multiplicative. Marcos didn't get rich alone. He created wealth for hundreds of employees, transformed the lives of millions of patients, and inspired thousands of professionals around the world. When we do good genuinely and strategically, we create virtuous circles that expand infinitely. The life of Rafael, Otavio's son, was saved by Josias. This generated gratitude in Otavio, who funded Josias's treatment, which became the starting point for transforming Marcus's life, who founded an institute that has already impacted over 1 million people. One action led to another in an endless chain of positive transformation. And this makes us reflect, how many chains of transformation are we starting or stopping every day? When we choose to be kind to someone, we may be planting the seed of something much greater than we can imagine. History also teaches us about the importance of dreaming big. Marcos started out dreaming only of paying his bills. Josias dreamed of helping some people on the streets. Otavio simply wanted to return a favor. But when they combined their individual dreams, they created something that transcended all their initial expectations. This shows us that our dreams can be very small compared to what we can actually achieve when we genuinely dedicate ourselves to serving others. Another powerful lesson is about innovation with purpose. Mobile clinics were born out of necessity, but they have become a revolution in global public health. When our primary goal is to serve people, we find creative solutions to the greatest challenges. If this story touched your heart, if it inspired you to be a better version of yourself, share it with your friends and family. Let's spread this message of hope and show that there are still beautiful stories happening every day around us. Subscribe IBNO channel and activate the bell so you don't miss any of the inspiring stories we bring to you. Leave your Locato, help us reach more people who need to hear messages of hope and transformation. And tell us in the comments, what part of the story touched you the most? What concrete action do you intend to take after hearing this story? Do you know someone who needs a second chance? We believe that each of you has the potential to be the protagonist of a story as beautiful as this one. Sometimes all we need is the courage to take the first step, like Dr. Marcos did that afternoon when he decided to treat Josias with care and respect. Remember, you don't have to wait for millions to start transforming lives. Start today with what you have, where you are, a genuine smile, a word of encouragement, an opportunity offered, a prejudice abandoned. Small actions can generate great transformations. Stay with us here on the Vidas Q Tokam channel, because our mission is to show that even in a world that sometimes seems lost, there are still incredible people making a difference and transforming lives every day. And who knows, in a few years, we'll be here telling your story of transformation to millions of people around the world. Until the next story, and always remember, you too can be the change someone is waiting for.